Hello, everyone joining. Welcome to CMS in Touch event. We're talking about, no, go back, please, thank you. We're talking about Best Critical Dissertation Thesis Award today. We'll start shortly, but in the meantime, if you could just put in the chat where you're joining us from today, that would be great. Say hello in the chat. It would be fantastic. We're just waiting for a few more people to join, and then we'll begin in a couple of minutes. If you're just joining us now, welcome. We'll begin shortly. In the meantime, put where you're joining us from in the chat just to say hello. Great to see people joining from so many places. Wonderful. So I think we're going to kick off now, and other people can catch up if they join later. So welcome, everyone. Fantastic to see you joining from so many places. Today, we're talking about the Best Critical Dissertation Thesis Award 2024 that is run by the Academy of Management Critical Management Studies Division. This is an interactive event, so you will have noticed it's not a webinar. It's in a Zoom meeting mode, which means you can put your cameras on if you want. You don't have to, but you can, and you can just ask questions, raise your hand, ask question at any point. You can also do it via the Q&A function, but you don't have to. We wanted to make this really interactive. So we've got an hour, and we're going to, Ghazal, if you could, next slide, please. That would be great. Yeah, so we've got we're three of us running this event today, myself and Ghazal, my co-organizer and co-chair-elect at CMS AOM, and we're also very delighted to have Belinda Zakrzewska with us today, who is last year's award winner, who is here to share experiences, tips, tears and joy and everything else. So thank you very much, Belinda, for joining us. So next slide, please, Ghazal. So this is just a very simple structure for today. Ghazal and I are going to tell you a bit about the award and how to apply. Then we'll hear from Belinda, and then we'll just open up to Q&A, which is probably like Belinda's part and the Q&A part at the greatest value from today. So this is where you get to ask your questions and you get sort of, experience secondhand what Belinda has gone through. Hopefully nothing too traumatic, but you know what I mean. Okay, so next slide, please, Ghazal. So a little bit about the award. This is an annual award that happens every year, and the idea is to award the most outstanding dissertation in the field of critical management studies. So if you've recently completed a doctoral dissertation or thesis, the terminology is slightly different at different sides of the Atlantic. In any fields associated with critical management studies, then you may be eligible to enter this competition. All entries are anonymously reviewed by 2 CMS scholars with expertise in the field, and the idea is to provide with constructive and developmental feedback. So hopefully, you know, that's helpful. Even if you don't win, you still get some feedback that's hopefully would be helpful to you towards a publication or something like that. Okay, next slide, please. So These are some of the recent previous winners, topped with Belinda right there at the top. As you go down the list, you'll see the diversity of different topics that have won and places, and also people, and you might start recognizing some names. So Paulina Sigara, for example, is now part of the Academy of Management CMS Executive on the chair track role. Jen Manning, you might recognize. Farina Alamgir has won lots of prizes since then for like best papers and etc. Suze Wilson is now very well known at New Zealand. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Gazal. Some of the earlier winners, so the records begin in 2005, and you probably can see more names that you recognize. So Todd Brigman won in 2005. Todd is one of the big stars, but Patrizia Zanoni, obviously, who is now editor-in-chief of organization. Gabi Durepos, who's seems to be juggling a million things at once and is great at all of them. And yours truly, I won it back in 2011, and now I'm sort of running the competition with Gazal. So you never know where this award will take you. It can lead to unexpected places. Okay, next slide, please, Gazal. So eligibility, this is the boring but important bit. So you need to have completed your thesis or dissertation between 1st of April 2022 and 31st of March 2024. So this year we've broadened the eligibility window to 2 years, and we did it for 2 reasons. One is to better cater to career breaks and nasty stuff happening in people's lives, and in general, just to make it easier for people to apply. And secondly, from this year onwards, we've removed our own students from the competition. So our own PhD students are not eligible to apply, which would be mean to them if they couldn't apply at all. We ran the competition for 1 year, then we hand it on to someone else. So they could, in theory, then apply next year when we are not involved in the decisions. And of course, your PhD must be critical. So it must fall within the scope of CMS Division's domain statement. Next slide, please. So the question is then, what constitutes critical? It's quite a broad definition, but at the core of it, it's being critical of established management ideologies and practices, taken for granted assumptions, underlying social and economic orders surrounding organization and business, and also critical of mainstream management theories and theorizing. So the AOM CMS Division's premise is that structural features of contemporary society encourage organizations, their managers, towards domination, exploitations, and these are some of the things that we question, right? And we try to upend those and make the world a better, fairer, more just and more caring place. So we are driven by this desire to change the situation and develop more critical interpretations of management society and to generate proposed radical alternatives. And you can read more about the division on the CMS-AOM.org website. Okay, next slide, please. These are just some of the things. It's a word cloud made of some of the examples of what critical work involves. So, from power to subjectivity, ethics, education, learning, rationality, e-working, environment, careers, assessments, alternative organizing, globalization, discourses, leadership, etc., gender resistance, all activism, all kinds of things, entrepreneurship, consulting, etc., writing, basically anything that you can be critical of most things, right? That's the relevance of management and organizing. Okay. Of course, it's not an exclusive list. It's just examples that we thought of. Okay, and next slide, please, Gazal. Okay, so more boring practicalities. What do you have to submit? So you need to submit 4 documents. One, a title page, an abstract. This goes with your author identification and contact information, so we can contact you. Separately to that, a separate document, which is the kind of the heart of the submission, is your abridged anonymized version of the dissertation. So you have to remove all your identifying information from that as if you were submitting a journal paper. And this will be sent out to reviewers, and you must include title, abstract, a summary of each chapter of the dissertation thesis, so maximum 30 pages, double space, 12-point font. Don't make it too long because that just makes it difficult for everyone. And that should include everything, basically charts, tables, and references. Then also separately, a one-page signed supporting letter from your dissertation or thesis examination chair or from your lead supervisor to certify the completion date, just to make sure that this really falls within the eligibility window, and to also act as your recommendation for submission to this award. And then finally, a cover letter separately to include the following. So the details of everyone who is involved in the examination process, so examiners, supervisors, dissertation chair, and this is so that they can be excluded, that we don't send your submission out to them for review. Secondly, the names and email addresses of 4 other scholars, so no one involved in this process, who have expertise in your area and who could act as your reviewers. This is your chance to nominate friendly reviewers, basically. And I do really suggest that you think carefully of people who know your area and who might be able to provide a fair and constructive assessment. You can consult your supervisors in this choice as well. I would probably recommend it. And finally, the cover letter to include a statement confirming your eligibility. Okay, and next slide, please. So how do I submit? So importantly, the deadline is 2nd of April. Unfortunately, we can't grant extension because the whole process is really tightly packed together before the dissertation. So you must submit it by the 2nd of April. This is not one of those academic deadlines that are forever extended. You must hit it. So prepare your documents as PDF documents and send them by email to both Gazelle and myself. And this is just to make double sure that nothing falls through the cracks. That if we send it to both of us, then that just makes it safer. Okay, and next slide, please. And then the outcome. So the award is sponsored by the journal organization. And they sponsor the prize. The outcome of submissions will be communicated by 7th of June and presented in Chicago at the CMS Division business meeting during the Academy of Management conference, which is 9th of 14th August this year. And you will receive a nice certificate, and you'll receive a prize sponsored by organization and a 2-year subscription to the journal provided by Sage. And additionally, you'll also benefit from reputational boost that comes with winning the Best Critical Doctoral Dissertation Thesis Award, which signals that your contribution is relevant, exciting, timely, etc. Okay, and next slide, please. And now for a much more exciting part of this event, over to Belinda, our last year's winner, who will share her experiences and tips. Over to you, Belinda.
Thank you, Alex. I'm very happy to be here, part of this panel. So thank you for the invitation, Alex and Gazelle. And yeah, let me share with you a little bit of my experience applying for this award. So to begin with, perhaps I should tell you a little bit about my dissertation so that then you better understand the feedback that I got from the reviewers, and I guess why it was awarded the title of Best Critical Dissertation Award. So my research was focused on the concept of authenticity in the marketplace, specifically in cultural fields. So just to give you an idea, when we're thinking of something like a restaurant, or it could be music. Oh, by the way, did it zoom in? I don't know why.
Yeah, it zoomed in a bit. Oh, that's better.
Okay, yes. All right. So when we're thinking about like an authentic restaurant, for instance, which, was the topic of my dissertation, you could think that it is authentic because it sticks to traditions, or because the chef is very creative. So marketplace authenticity has different meanings, right? So let's see if I can. Okay. So authenticity entails, for instance, the making claims about the place of origin of an ingredient. It could be the use of traditional methods. It can also be the association of the product with the identity of the producer, or it can also be symbolic links to the past, right? So, for instance, heritage. So, as you can see, the notion of authenticity is sort of romanticized to some point. And what I was trying to do in my dissertation was say that cultural fields are characterized by racial hierarchies and also class-based inequalities. So how can authenticity perhaps reinforce those inequalities or counter them? So that was the question, right? And especially because there is literature that says that when you claim that something is authentic, you can be exotifying or commodifying the identities of racialized groups, both in the global north, but also the global south. So just to give you an example, when French chocolate makers were trying to make authenticity claims about their chocolates, they would commodify the image of producers in Africa and making them look childish in advertising. So my purpose with my dissertation was to examine how power was operating through these organizational authenticity claims. And my focus was in a post-colonial context, which was Peru. So what I did was examine how this was happening in the culinary field in Peru, where a new cuisine is being created by people with privilege, local chefs that have a privilege, embody whiteness, and how they are maybe helping or reinforcing structures of inequality when they work with indigenous groups in Peru. So the feedback that I received from the reviewers was that they liked, first of all, the theoretical concept and approach. So they liked that I was critically analyzing the notion of authenticity. And they also liked the fact that I was focused on a context in the global south, right? Because most of our literature tends to focus on the global north. And it was also giving voice to indigenous peoples, because I did interview indigenous producers that were working with elite chefs. So that was another point, that they liked my methodology and that a lot of data was collected. So it was interviews with indigenous producers, chefs, journalists, and other important actors in the culinary field. I also retrieved TripAdvisor reviews from these restaurants and numerous newspaper articles, books, and journals to get a better understanding of the context. And of course, this all ties up in the sense that it was relevant for the community of the critical management studies community, right? Because I was focusing on power inequality, and I also had this decolonial, post-colonial approach to things. So, oh, I don't know what happened, Ghazal.
I think there's probably just a bit of lag.
Lag, yeah.
Just wait a moment between pressing any buttons.
Okay. Can we move the slide a little bit to the left, perhaps?
It's showing fine on my screen.
Oh, there you go. Yes. Okay, so my tips for you, well, first of all, my dissertation was a paper-based dissertation. So I had 3 papers. And the way I went about it was when I was writing the abridged version of the dissertation, my structure was as follows. So I had the abstract, which was more or less like a page. So I explained what the papers were about, the overall theme of the dissertation. I also provided the dissertation overview, so explained the research questions for for the 3 papers, and also the methodology for each paper, because my first paper was a conceptual paper. It was a literature review, and the other 2 papers were empirical ones. So I explained how I went about them. And once I had done that, then I could focus on the findings and the contributions of each paper, which is perhaps the most important thing that you will have to do. So I didn't take too long explaining these 2 parts, right? So then my focus was on findings and contributions of paper 1, paper 2, and paper 3, right? And I ended the abridged version of the dissertation with an overall contribution. So what am I trying to do with my dissertation, right? So other tips that might be useful for you guys is that, Gazelle, is it possible to move it to the left a little bit? Oh, sorry, to the right. Because it's not, you cannot see.
We can see.
It's showing
we
fine
can
on my
see
screen.
it.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you see it, Linda?
Yes, I can. I can see
Okay.
it now. I was covering some of the things. All right. So some of the tips is that obviously use what you have in your dissertation. You, try to be smart about it, right? Use what you have already written, and perhaps the work that you will have to do is try to summarize it, try to edit what you have in order to write the abridged version. Something that I also encourage you to do is to use figures or tables to illustrate your findings, because this is going to be super helpful for reviewers to better understand what you have done. And if you're proposing a new model, for instance, then add it to the abridged version of the dissertation, so that, yeah, the visuals always help, right? And also plan how you want to go about it, right? Because you might have other commitments. Perhaps you are also teaching, you have meetings, you have conferences to attend. But in my case, I spent between 5 to 7 days to work on on everything, all the 4 main documents that Alex was mentioning at the beginning of the presentation. So I made sure to contact my supervisor. I made sure that my dissertation, the abridged version of the dissertation had a flow. And I also made sure to obviously proofread the document before submitting it. And yeah, so I think, and of course, when in doubt, reach out to Alex, Ghazal, and if you want to reach out to me, I'm also happy to help you in any way or form that I can. And yeah, I do have to give a shout out to Richard, who he was the one answering my questions when I was sending him emails, just to double check, that I was doing things right. So please feel free to reach out to the community. And I think that's everything from my side. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Belinda. That's really helpful and informative. So this is where we open up the floor to you, go over to questions. So Ghazal, I think we probably can take the slides down for now, whilst just take them off for now, and we'll come back to the closing slides after the questions. Thank you. So yeah, over to you. Now's your chance to ask questions, share any worries or concerns.
Can I go? Hi, Alex, Ghazal, and Belinda. So happy to see you all. Thanks, Belinda, for explaining your research and sharing your tips. So I have a few questions. So as you have mentioned, you wrote the dissertation in paper format. You had 3 papers. In my case, it's not paper. It is chapter wise, and it has 8 chapters. So basically, my finding has 3 chapters, and others are there is a common methodology chapter, common literature chapter, common introduction chapter, such that. So I would like to know when, and it may be you could also answer when we will write the summary of each chapter, like what should we focus on, how to write it in a way so that it doesn't lose its main gravity and main content. At the same time, it convey what we try to convey, because what my challenge I am facing is my finding section is too big, and I think if I cut it short, I will like the main thing of the thesis will go away. So I don't know how to do that. So if you have any suggestions for that, it will be really helpful. Okay.
I can have a go at answering that, because Belinda, yours was different, and Ghazal, also feel free to chip in. But just as having done this, my thesis was a standard thesis, not a paper-based thesis. And it was a while ago. I said it was 2011 that I won, but I don't see why this would be different now. So I just basically summarized each chapter a bit like you would do in an introduction or thesis conclusion, but a bit longer for each chapter. So what is the key contribution of each chapter, and just divide the available word count between these chapters to ensure that everything is included. So like your key methodological approach, summarize your methodological approach, for example, summarize your theoretical framework, summarize methodological approach, summarize your findings, discussion, and contribution. So you just basically, it took me a long time as well. As Belinda says, I think that's really important tip. Don't underestimate the amount of time this actually takes, which was a bit of a pain, to be honest. To go, take a big book that you've produced over 3-4 years and then try to condense it. But actually, it's a really good exercise, because it then helped me to talk about my thesis much more, because I've gone through this condensing exercise. It's not quite a 2-minute or 20-second elevator pitch, but it's sort of moving that direction. So it was hard work, but I found it helpful at the end. Hopefully that answers your question. Ghazal, do you have anything to add?
So I didn't participate in this competition, but I did review dissertations for this, and yes, it's just as Alex said, or Belinda, I don't Remember who? It's exhausting to read those, right? So, I mean, always think of the reviewer. You want them to really understand what you're saying without exhausting them. And I really liked, Belinda, what you said about the figures, because, I was one of the reviewers, for instance, on Paulina's dissertation, and I still remember the figures from her dissertation. So, this is how our brains work, the visual mapping sometimes, even though her dissertation is so rich, but somehow I remember that table of the figure. But I know it's really hard, Poonam, because this is your baby that you've been working on for so long. But, yes, just like imagine you're stuck in the elevator and you're pitching, right? So, yes, what's the most important thing you want people to know? Yeah.
If
Yes,
I
thank
may
you.
add something as well, Alex, I think that you said that your findings is divided into 3 sections.
Yes, yes. In
Okay.
3 chapters, yes.
Well, I agree with Alex. Like, you should do like a summary of every chapter that you have in your dissertation, right? And when you're writing the findings, then I would encourage you to start right off the bat with the main contribution, like if you have like a conceptual model, or you've created like a process model, like start with that and then try to unpack it, right? And try to say like, okay, why is this helpful, right? How is this contributing to this theory? How does this change the way we understand something? But perhaps because it's going to be a long document, what I'm trying to say is that if you give the reader the main contribution at the start, it's going to be clear, right? Rather than making them read through a lot of paragraphs to, oh, this is the contribution, right? So yeah, that's the only thing that I would add.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your suggestions. It is really helpful.
Yeah, go ahead, Constanza.
Well, first of all, thanks everyone for your really insightful tips. I just wanted to ask you something linked to the crafting also for our research, because like I debated my thesis now nearly 1 year ago, and I realized that also my thesis is paper-based, and like that these papers are evolving, of course, since they haven't been published yet. And I was wondering, I was already starting thinking about what to keep inside, what to leave out, how much is important somehow to stick to what has been, discussed in front of the commission, or rather showing, let's say, the depth of the data, and so somehow the starting point of your theorizing, that of course is there, but then of course crafting publication, maybe, I don't know, certain theories, you're changing them. So how would you approach, let's say, this evolving process from, having your dissertation done, and then, how the research is going ahead, let's say?
Belinda, maybe this one, thank you, Constanza, sorry. Well, first of all, thank you for the question. Belinda, maybe you could take this one because you also did a thesis by papers.
Yeah, so Constanza, do you mind explaining a little bit more? Like I got lost for a moment there.
Okay, so for instance, my thesis is based on 3 papers,
Yes.
and 2 of them I'm basically rewriting them. I don't know, I think for the 10th time now, trying to have them submitted to certain journals. And of course, the shape they are in now is a different thing compared to the shape they had when I presented them in the dissertation. So I wonder how much emphasis should I give to the work I, defended in front of the commission, which of course is there, and if I passed it, probably it had some value, compared to, what the state of the art of this research is at the moment.
Yes. Okay, got it. I got it. Thank you very much. So I had a similar situation actually, because one of the papers that I have in my dissertation is currently, well, it is still under R&R. And when I applied, it was still in the second round of the R&R. Now it's in the third one. So what I did was stick to what was in the dissertation, because if I'm not mistaken, do you also have to submit the whole dissertation, Alex? No. No. Okay. Well, so what I did was stick to what was in the dissertation from what I remember. Yeah, because you know, like you said, papers are always evolving, so you don't know if what you have right now is going to evolve in 1 year. So what I would recommend is sticking to what was in the dissertation, because, you know, if you passed your viva, so it means that it is a good paper, right? So it has already made a contribution. The only thing is that it is still in the process of being polished, right? To get to be published. But yeah, I guess that is my suggestion. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
And actually, I agree. Thank you again, Belinda. And thank you, Constanza. I would agree, because it is an award for your dissertation, right? At the end of the day, not for your papers. So it makes sense to stick to what you've said and done in the PhD. So I would echo that.
So there are a couple of questions in the chat. Did you see that, Alex?
Sorry, I
Can't-
muted myself. Do you want to read them out, Gazelle, for the purposes of the recording, so that when people wish
right.
to, they can...
Right. So to apply for the award, should we be members of AOM CMS, and how do I apply?
Yeah, so you don't have to be a member of the division to apply for the award, but obviously if you win the award, then the award is presented at the AOM meeting, for which you need to be an AOM member. But the really important thing is that you fit the remit and the spirit and the ethos of CMS division. So would you agree with that, Gazelle?
Yes, and then the question is, how do I apply? So when you apply for AOM membership, to attend the conference, they ask you to become a member. Then they ask you which divisions you're interested in, and so just click on CMS as one of the two that you get to be part of for free. And then I think McGill's question of statement confirming eligibility needs a signature from supervisor, I guess. Yeah, Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, so you can, I think it's important that the supervisor or the dissertation chair writes the statement, because it also acts as a recommendation as well as the statement. So first, two important functions in that letter. One is to confirm your eligibility, that you fall within that window and that you've passed your PhD. And the second one is basically a reference that they recommend. Doesn't need to be long, but just to say, I fully support this application. It's a great PhD, and all the eligibility criteria have been met. So something along those lines.
Hey, Magda, how are you? Go ahead.
Hi, thanks for organizing this. This has been great. I hope you can hear me okay. My connection has been unstable. I've been in and out of the meeting. Sorry about that. So sorry, this is repetitive because I didn't quite catch all of the discussion, but I just wanted to check if it's okay that the list of potential reviewers includes people from our home university, as long as they weren't directly involved in the process of the thesis.
Anybody else wants to answer? How did you go about, maybe that's a good question to expand, and thank you, Magda, for this question. Belinda, how did you go about choosing which referees to nominate?
Hi, Magda. Thank you for your question. So in my case, I focused on well-known, perhaps, scholars that have written in the field that was related to my topic, and especially CMS members. So I remember, I think I added Jennifer Manning as well as one of my reviewers. So it would be perhaps a good idea to see some of the CMS members that are, perhaps writing, or they have some sort of research topic that is tangential to what you are doing, so that you could nominate them. That's how I went about it. So that would be my advice.
And did you have any from your own institution, Belinda?
No, I didn't actually. No. So I don't know if that would be perhaps a bit an ethical problem. I'm not sure about that, but I would always encourage you to look outside your home institution, and also check your dissertation, like who have you been citing quite a lot, right? So nominate that person. And like I said, it's always good to, because all of your dissertations are critical, then there will be someone in the community that might be interested in reading your paper, or that has written something along those lines. So you can also include them as, potential reviewers.
Great, thank you very much. So I
Thank you.
think we ask you to nominate 4. We will, with the aim of getting 2 reviewers, because obviously not everyone can make it. People are busy. Also, various reasons. So whilst we haven't said you can't have people from one institutions, I would completely agree with Belinda and encourage you to look out, because also see it as a way of getting those people that work in your field to more closely engage with your work. So of course your work is anonymized when it goes to reviewers, but afterwards, if you win, then they will know who you are. And Ghazal was earlier talking about reviewing Paulina's work, and she still remembers it. So it probably has a more beneficial effect to you if you go beyond university than if you don't. What do you think, Ghazal?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, when I read her work, I said, oh, I want to collaborate with her. So yeah, agree with that. There are questions about APA 7th formatting. I'm not sure if we're that particular. Are we, Alex? No? Consistent formatting is what we're looking at. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, as long as it's consistent and it should be fine. One of the main ones, and let's say use like APA or Harvard or anything like that. Yeah. It's if it's a big hot porch and it makes it difficult to read, that's the problem.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, should the supervisor give good arguments about why the dissertation's good? I don't think we're looking for very exhaustive letters. The reviewers are going to be looking at your document, your 30-page document. Yeah.
Absolutely agree with that.
May I jump in?
Sure, please.
So my supervisor, Michael Beverland, who has written quite a lot on authenticity, he wrote, one of the nicest recommendations letters for me. And he made his argument in just one line, saying that, the concept of authenticity has been romanticized. And he said, which I pled like guilty as charged, because his work has also done that. So and just said like why my dissertation was important. So your supervisors might want to do something along those lines, right? Like highlight the contribution of your dissertation, and it could be just one line or a couple of lines. It doesn't have to be exhaustive in that sense.
I agree. And remember also that this letter will not go out to reviewers. It's just for Ghazal and I to know that, that you're eligible, to confirm that you're eligible and that you have support of your supervisor to do it as well. It's so you know, don't spend too long worrying about it. It's just yeah, don't make it too long, because otherwise we'll just have to read it and we'll go, it's a longer letter to read. You can make a very nice supporting statement, as Belinda was saying, in a couple of sentences.
So one more question in the chat. Is the competition open for EDDs as well? The Doctor of Education. Alex?
So I think I've never come across this before, but I can't see why not, as long as it falls within the domain of CMS. Yeah, so it depends. It depends what it is about. If it's about just education, then it would not necessarily fall into the domain of CMS. It's got to be about organizations, organizing, business school, education, that sort of stuff. But just because it's a different qualification, as long as it's a doctorate, to me, it doesn't matter. What do you think, Gazal?
Yes, exactly. Exactly what you said. As long as it's a critical dissertation, yes. Please submit. Mary Beth.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. This is really helpful. I'm wondering, so in my dissertation, I spent a lot of time talking about self-positioning and the need to be clear about, like positionality when you're doing your research. So if it's a blind review process, this is something that I come up against a lot, is if it's a blind review process and you have to anonymize it, you have to take out all of that self-positioning from the work. So in other journals and other publications, we've like pulled the words out. So it's like my name is, and then it's a blank, and I live in blah, 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 which, I mean, it's not the ideal way to say that, but is that acceptable? Any suggestions about that or thoughts on that?
So I would say yes. So you can just redact your details from this and maybe put a note in somewhere that, because it was the style of writing is quite self-identifying, I had to redact it, but I wanted to leave in the text form to communicate the spirit of the writing, so that's what probably I would do. What do you think, Gazal and Belinda?
Agree, yeah. Of course, because this is, writing differently is something that is a big part of CMS. And so the reviewers will very likely understand this. And you don't have to work very hard to convince CMS reviewers.
Okay, so would that be in a footnote or at the top end?
Either way, I think, as
All
long
right.
as it's very clear upfront. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And also another advantage, Mary, if you make it clear, you might also want to include in the cover letter, for example, if you make it clear to us that this is a thesis written differently, we can also make sure that we send it to reviewers who are receptive to that particular style of writing. So yeah, because we definitely want to promote alternative ways of writing, as well, as Gazal is saying.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I know we've been sent a question offline about if you're doing a thesis by publication, by papers, how do you deal with stuff if stuff is already published with anonymity and stuff? So Belinda, were any of your papers already published by the time you?
No.
Anybody else is in a position where the papers are already published, or any of the papers are published? Is it a question of interest to anybody else? You have a published paper, okay, and Ingeborg, okay. So I'm not sure, to be honest, how best to go about it, because I've never come across the situation before. I would probably do a similar thing to what happens when you submit a journal paper that has to be anonymized. So you can just remove your citation and say author in brackets. So I think that's what I would do. Just don't obviously reference the published work, and but I think that's probably the best way forward. What do you think, Ghazal?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it should be such a big part of your application, because we're really interested in the dissertation. When we cite ourselves, we in papers that we are submitting, it's usually because we're building on that argument. So unless you need to do that, I don't really think there's a need to self-cite here. I mean, unless you can think of ways that you would need to.
I think you're absolutely right, actually, Ghazal. There shouldn't be a reason why you need to draw your attention to your publications, is there? Because this is about the PhD. So maybe it's best just not to mention it at all. Maybe that's safest. Unless you absolutely need to for some reason, in which case, blank out. So Adeli is saying, it's not so much about self-citation, but if I present the paper, because the paper-based dissertation, the title may be recognizable. True, it's a small field. I don't think we can work around that because, well, I don't think there's anything we can do about it, really. It's what happens with conference papers reviews, with journal papers reviews. At the end of the day, it's a small field. So I just think do your best in terms of anonymizing and make sure that, you know, the reviewers you pick sensible reviewers, and and we'll ask the reviewers to declare any conflicts of interest as well. So if suddenly they recognize the paper and they're best friends with you and they have a conflict of interest, they can tell us about it and we can choose someone else. I think that's a good way forward, Ghazal.
Yep, absolutely. Hopefully that. But if you have any specific concern, you can always email us, just like Belinda said. Yeah, even after this.
Yeah, I would also add that it goes back to Costanza's question, right? Like, what happens if my paper is like in the process of being published? Well, just focus on what you've done in your dissertation, right? And another thing, it might be useful to disclose that it has been published in the cover letter, right? Because you can do that, because the cover letter will be read by Alex and Ghazal, if I'm not mistaken, not by the reviewers. So it might be a good idea to disclose it to them. And remember that when you're writing your abridged version of the dissertation, you will have to anonymize even like the title, right? Like the title has to be different from the title of your dissertation and the title of the paper that you have published.
Right, thanks. There's a question by Kerry about the references. Are they part of the 30-page allowance? And then how best to present my dissertation references? So I would say only use those references that you are actually including as in-text citations. And Alex, I believe that they are part of the 30-page. Yeah, yes, Belinda is also, okay, all right.
Yeah, I agree on both counts.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have also one related question. So suppose I have discussed my thesis, not send the thesis to review, but discuss the ideas with some scholar, and that scholar may know that it's my work. So can I suggest their name in that case? Because they are related to the field and they can understand the theories maybe in a better way. So is there any conflict of interest there?
Just as Alex said, this is your chance to name friendly reviewers, right? So go ahead. Yes.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
Can I say something regarding the references though? So when I submitted my document, I single spaced the references and that was okay. And just to give you an idea, guys, I had 4 pages for the reference list. So might be something to consider. But yeah, it was accepted, you know, for me to single space the references as long as the body was double spaced.
That's brilliant. It's really helpful guide, Belinda. Any other questions, or have we now covered most things? Go ahead, Costanza.
Actually, I have one because I use a lot of visual methodology, mainly my observations are linked with the photographies. So I wonder, I understood from Belinda that it's great to have also figures. I wonder how much to show also of the data. So not only necessarily the visual material, but also maybe if you have interviews or, you know, field observations, how much you would like as potential reviewers, let's say, touch by hands the data, or how much to focus on the theory building part.
Maybe like a healthy balance, because it sounds like this kind of, you know, I liked how you said readers would like to touch your data. So yeah, especially if it's unusual, then some of it would be great to add. What do you think, Belinda, Alex?
Yeah, no, I agree with Ghazal. I would say that, you know, think of the figures, the tables as complementary material that will allow you to better explain your contribution. So, and again, it will very much depend on each of your dissertations, right? So depending on what you've done, how you want to go about it, how much you want to explain. So it's just finding that healthy balance, like Ghazal said. But perhaps if you want to take away something from what I've said, is just remember that the figures, the tables, pictures are just there to support your what you are saying, right?
I also agree. I think it would be really lovely if your methodology is so visual to have just a flavor, you know, to get a flavor, feel for what it looks like, feels like. I really love the touch the data metaphor. So yeah, definitely. Okay, any more questions? Great. Well, don't forget that you don't, you know, your questions don't need to stop now. You can always ask Ghazal, myself, and also Belinda, who's kindly offered. If you have any questions further down the line, do reach out. And I do hope that you submit. And obviously, please don't be discouraged if you don't win. I hope you win, but obviously not everyone can win. It doesn't mean that your work isn't wonderful. So we hope you'll find other ways of being recognized as well if that happens. So, and we hope that the feedback that will be provided will be helpful in any case, you know, will help towards publication, etc., etc. Could we possibly have the slides back up? Thank you, Ghazal. So just a word of thanks. Thank you very much to everyone who made today possible, particularly to my co-chair Ghazal and to Belinda, who made fantastic contribution today, I think, in terms of sharing experiences and tips. There's really nothing like hearing from the person who's been through it, and you've shared wonderful wisdom there, Belinda, so thank you. And next slide, please. So this is a CMS in Touch event. So thank you for attending the CMS in Touch event. Do get in touch with us. In touch. You can get in touch with us via email or via Twitter, or we have the full archive of all our past events on our YouTube channel, so you can go and watch them. This has been recorded and will be on YouTube in a few days' time as well. If you want to listen to it again, listen to Belinda's tips again, then you can do so. And yes, if you have your own suggestions for a future CMS in Touch event, even if you're just finishing your PhD, we don't discriminate in terms of career stages. Please get in touch. If you want to be part of CMS in Touch, also get in touch, etc. So look out for further events coming from CMS in Touch. We have a big thing towards the end of the year, which is the first organizational journal virtual conference, which is 100% online and 100% free. So do make sure you engage with that. The QR code should take you to the call for contributions. And this is all from us. So thank you again for attending. Take care, stay safe, and see you soon.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you for coming.